As you heard, transforming developmental education began as a big ideas project, and the academic officers were really very eager to begin the conversation statewide about what we can do as a sector to transform what we do on our campuses. And our discussions were very lengthy, long, interesting, lively, probably every adjective you can come up with, as we know that they are on your campuses as well. And so I do thank my colleague, fellow academic officers for their contributions to this. And I wanted to share with you to start with just some data. You're very familiar with this, but it was kind of the starting point for us in our discussions as a reminder of the significance of this challenge that we have. As you well know, because you work with students enrolled in developmental education every day, approximately 67% of first-time, full-time students in New Jersey begin in one or more developmental education classes. Less than 40% complete the required sequence of courses in developmental education. And only about 15% of those students will actually enroll in college-level gatekeeping courses, which means they're not moving into the curriculum. Graduation rates for students who begin in the lowest level of developmental education is in the single digits. And nationally, we have found that tens of thousands of students every year are placed inappropriately or inaccurately in developmental education courses. And so, as the experts in developmental education and the delivery of the curriculum, you know that the students who are enrolled in these courses need us the most. They are at the highest risk, and we know that their lives are likely to change if they persist and earn a degree. So we're really committed to serving developmental education students and making sure that more of them move through the curriculum. When we got back together, we decided that we really needed an expert to come in, and many of you were there, as Dwight said, to listen to Dr. Hughes present more data, more information about the emerging trends, what's happening nationally in the area of developmental education. And she shared with us a lot of the research that was taking place across the country. She provided statistics, as I said, and also the challenges that we face as a sector and as individual colleges. She identified 3 areas, and we really focused when Eileen and I got together to start working on the paper with the academic officers. She really focused on 3 areas, and that guided, as I said, the paper that was produced in our conversation. She said the first one was before college enrollment, the goal should be developmental education avoidance. I liked the way she worded that because it wasn't just place students accurately. Our goal should be in helping to prepare students to do well as they enter the institution and avoid developmental education for all the reasons you know of and that were just stated with the data. And the second item she said was, as students enroll, there is a need to improve assessment and placement. It's pretty obvious, and I think the academic officers have been working with you in order to do that. And third, she said, for students placed in developmental education, there's a need to accelerate, contextualize, improve pedagogy, and provide support structures to ensure success. So we use these comments, these areas, as a starting point in our conversation. And I think we're at the point now of believing that there isn't one answer, any one correct answer. And so you'll hear Eileen talk about what's happening nationally and some of the options that we have presented to the academic officers, because it's probably a combination of strategies on our campuses that will help us get to the goal of improving the student success on our campuses, improving the numbers of students who get through developmental education. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Eileen to talk a little bit about what's happening nationally and some of the ideas presented in the rest of the paper. So you can. Can you hear me?
So actually, I'm going to go a little bit off script. Karen said that I was going to talk a little bit about some of the national initiatives, and I'm not going to. You guys have the white paper, and I suspect most of you have at least perused it, if not read it fairly carefully. I'd actually like to talk a little bit more just about why we need to rethink developmental education. One of the key principles that we started with in developing the white paper was the idea that every single initiative needed to start with the student. So some people in higher education have suggested that helping community college students succeed is a moral imperative, and no one here, I suspect, will quibble with that. But what should be mentioned is that student success and completion are also increasingly becoming economic imperatives as well. For students and their families, and certainly for our institutions, however much we may not want to talk about money in that capacity. But when you couple the economic realities, like recent changes to financial aid eligibility, the challenges of continued recession, and the skyrocketing costs of education, with the devastating realities of the numbers of students who place into developmental education and never get out or move on, then this seems to me an issue of larger proportion than just economic or moral. It seems to me that it's an issue simply of justice, and it's in our hands to deliver better. That's not to say that we're really doing anything deliberately wrong. It does mean that we might just be doing things the same, or that we might just be tweaking things here and there, hoping that something will stick. So if the real numbers of students in developmental education who never complete a course, or a sequence, or a gateway course, or 30 hours, or a degree don't shock us into change, here are two more reasons to think about why we should explode our current model of placement and remediation. Here's one. This comes from an article that Kay McClenny, director of the Center for Community College Student Engagement, wrote in 2009 in the Chronicle Online. Tracking first-time college students from Achieving the Dream schools shows that 72% of the 2002 cohort needed at least one remedial math course. After 3 years, only 23% of those students had successfully completed the remedial math sequence, a disturbing lack of progress overall. But, and it's a significant but, students from that very same cohort who successfully completed a remedial course in their first term of enrollment were then significantly more likely to persist than any other group in the college, including those who did not need remediation in the first place. And here's another. According to the CCRC Currents publication from April 2012, a growing number of studies from the CCRC and elsewhere call into question the ultimate benefits of the process of assessment and placement into remediation. 60% of incoming students are assigned to at least one remedial class, yet there is little evidence that remedial coursework does very much to strengthen student outcomes, especially for those students who score below, but relatively close to, the cutoff score for college-level courses. So we know there's lots of stuff happening on the national level, and we have two great speakers here today to talk about what's happening at their own institutions to shake up developmental education. I, for one, can't wait for the rest of the day when they talk to us a little bit about the real value of exploding old models. They will certainly remind us that we have options, but what we don't have is the option to do nothing.